This was going to be just a reaction video of Sarah Boone's sentencing in her trial after she was found guilty of second-degree murder for suffocating her boyfriend Jorge Torres in a suitcase and then videotaping him, begging her to let him out, saying that he couldn't breathe, and she refused to let him out. But what happened was, while I was watching the victim impact statements, I couldn't help but notice the drastic difference between, sorry, I'm getting a message. Okay, the drastic difference between Jorge Torres' mother, Blanca, and Sarah Boone. The way that these two ladies talked about Jorge Torres is so drastically different that I'm going to try to play both. If I can fit it into one video, I'm going to try both of their statements. And I want everyone to notice, this is how you talk about someone that you love. This is more like how you talk about someone that you hate. Okay, so let me know if y'all notice a difference in these two also.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Ma'am, good afternoon. Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
My name is Blanca Torres.
Okay. Ma'am, you can go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Okay, look. I just want to tell Sarah Boone that I don't hate her for what she did.
The first signs of sciatic nerve decay may surprise you.
Hold on.
Most people don't know this, but the real reason behind searing
And I always remember that evening when that lady came into my door and she knocked at the door. And she asked for my name. I tell her my name. And then she said, "Can I come in?" I said, "Okay, yes." And she told me to sit down. I never think that was gonna be my son. And then she said my son was dead. Since that day, I can't sleep. It's hard for me to remember that moment. My son is not here no more. She don't only kill my son, she killed a father, a brother, an uncle. It's been hard. And my family, because all the brothers, they will always work together. But now it's like something real. Love is missing. Sometimes when I look out the window, I'm waiting for him to come and say, "Mom, I love you." She was always there. She called me. I miss that mommy. The last time that I talked to him was at 12 o'clock in January, New Year. He came to my bed and said, "Mom." He woke me up and I said, "Mom, I love you. Happy New Year." And since that day, I don't see him no more. It was my son. I love him. And I miss him a lot. My family miss him a lot too. but I don't hurt her. But you know what? I was blessed. She ain't gonna be blessed like me because I have my son. I raise him. I have his children, my granddaughter, my grandson, and she don't gonna be able to have that. And I did. I raised him. He wasn't perfect, but he was a good son. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. State anything further from this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Defense?
No, sir.
Thank you. You may call your next victim impact statement.
Victoria Torres.
You know, that I didn't really realize that the last time she had talked to her son was on New Year's Eve. That's really sad because he was murdered at the end of February. So that's a new piece of information, but that victim impact statement was so heartbreaking. I don't know a better word to describe it. I couldn't get through it. It was terrible. Okay, let's go see the difference between Sarah Boone and what she has to say about George. You know, one thing that I really love that the mother said about him was that he was not perfect, but he was a good person. And I think anyone that loves someone would probably describe them in a similar manner. They wouldn't point out all the things that they did wrong. You know, they just may make it more general, like, well, he wasn't perfect. Okay, let's go check out Sarah now. Let's see what she has to say. Oh, here she comes. Of course, we got to get through the commercials. Hold on.
If you're over 40 and you're not dermaplaning, you're making a big mistake. This skincare method has been around for thousands of years and is widely...
You may proceed.
She could take this.
Yes, please. Thank you. Ms. Boone, you can be seated. You've been previously sworn. You may inquire, sir.
For the record, just state your name again.
Sarah Boone.
All right. Now, this is unlike a trial, so you're allowed to speak in a narrative form, as well as I understand you have taken some notes or written a letter that you want to read from, and then you want to speak to the court after that.
Yes.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and get started?
This is actually an edited version of...
Hold on a second.
I had a lot to say. I've had a lot of time to think about things, and I didn't really know how to put it on paper, and I didn't know how much I could say or how little I should say. So what I have here is, like I said, an edited version. But I would like to read the more important parts that I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial. And on top of what I have on paper, I have, this is just the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to read this, and then if I may, I would like to address everyone in my apology on top of my statement.
You may proceed, ma'am.
Kintu Sukuroi is a kind of Japanese ceramic style which means to repair with gold. In this tradition, when a ceramic piece breaks, an artisan will fuse the pieces back together again using liquid gold or gold dust lacquer. So rather than being covered up, the breaks become more obvious and a brilliant new piece of art emerges from the brokenness. It embraces flaws, weakness, and imperfections, and also teaches the essence of resilience. Every crack in a ceramic piece is a part of its history, and each piece becomes more beautiful because it has been broken. This is the wisdom of Kintu Sukuroi. In my wisdom and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan. All of my gold is forgiveness. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by George Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, infamy, defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violations, second-degree murder, forced into being pro se. Just as gold is very precious, forgiveness is invaluable. Forgiveness is not an attempt to change or forget who, what, or how you've lived through to be so gold, but an act of grace, humility, and considerable self-compassion to be set free from sorrow. Withholding forgiveness denies your brilliance and adds even greater grief and deeper heartache, irreparable cracks on top of the already that no one deserves, no matter the pain or disappointment, untruths or injustice. It doesn't matter, as the more broken you are, even though now different than before, you've become more outstanding and more extraordinary. Above all, when you let go of blame, misunderstandings, excuses, give up your anger and cease from resentment, this is forgiven. And when you forgive, you heal. And when you heal, you move forward. My goal begins with George Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit on, raped, stabbed, choked, laughed at, pushed, pulled, dragged, whipped, tripped, stole from, lied, terrorized, threatened, humiliated, forced, degraded, made me cry. Every time he tried to end me, defeat, or destroy. I forgive George for beating me senseless, for trying to sleep because I had to go to work or my son's field trip the next day, for ruining my deceased family's heirlooms, traditions, and keepsakes, my son's furniture, destroying the television we watched together, for wrecking our townhome by breaking windows, punching holes in the walls and doors, ramming his entire body into glass doors, kicking in my front and back door over and over and over, for breaking or removing the locks from all of the doors and sometimes the knobs altogether, so I had nowhere to feel safe, including the sacred space of my son's room where he beat me bloody on his bed. For terrorizing and threatening my blind and deaf dogs by leaving the gate open I built to keep them safe, telling me he hoped I'd find their bloated dead body in the pond or scrape their remains off of the pavement, for kicking them off of the bed and throwing across the room because they were trying to protect me. For threatening to...
You know what that makes me feel like she's doing here? When she's talking about George being mean to her dogs, which we never saw any proof of that. She said that she had pictures of him dancing with the dogs, but I think she's just trying to act like we should be grateful that she killed someone who was mean to dogs. You know, that's just what I'm getting from that. That is so disgusting. And it's really disgusting how she's comparing herself to gold, saying that she's beautiful because she's had to murder her boyfriend. It's so absurd. I can't even describe how despicable this statement is, but I don't want to interrupt too much. I want to get it all in one video.
Me unrecognizable to my son by breaking all of the bones in my face, like his brother Moses did to him after he kept seeing all of the bruises from George beating me, like all of the times their father beat their mother. For all of the drunken rages and fist fights with so many neighbors when wandering into their apartments during hunting expeditions after I had escaped.
The secret's out.
Okay, let's get through this commercial and then I'll pause it again because I have something to say about her. What she just said about George's father beat George's mother. I have something to say about that.
Miracle Balms are back, but only for a limited time. It's a skincare and makeup in one.
For drowning me in liquor.
Oh, I love this part. She said something like drowning me in liquor and making me pee or whatever. I'm not sure exactly what she said, but back to her saying that George's father beat George's mother. I mean, what proof does she have of that? And how disgusting that she would try to say anything negative about these people after she just killed their son. That is so disgusting. And even if it were true, the mother is still alive. The person that Sarah beat did not live through it, which makes her a far worse person than the Torres parents. It's just so disgusting that she would say that. That's the word for this entire statement that she gives, is disgusting and despicable.
Wine because I didn't want to drink, causing me to urinate on myself, then butting the end of the bottle in my face, giving me 2 black eyes and a bloody nose. For making me experience what it is to be sodomized. Threatening to kill my friends and the neighbors when they checked on me to make sure I was alive and in one piece. For threatening to burn down our townhome and set my car on fire because I got a job. For holding me hostage on weekends my son was supposed to come over by keeping my keys around his neck, my phone in his crotch, and a butcher knife stuck in the middle of the table as a warning not to ask anything or try to leave. For stabbing me in the leg and not letting me call 911 for an ambulance or seek help, where I nearly bled to death until I concocted a lie to save him from being arrested. For destroying my phone with a hammer because my son called. For me experiencing ever being arrested and after today, prison. For beating me almost blind, crushing my occipital lobe. For having me experience what it means to see stars, like in the cartoons, where a character has a tall lump on their head. I had that too, and many times. For dragging me downstairs by my hair in the middle of the night just to sit next to him. For taking my car driving drunk with my debit card to buy more alcohol while I slept, even after I kindly explained the importance of my car to take my son to school foremost, me to work, and he to his batterers intervention classes and
Okay, so 2 things. She said that George drug her by her hair down the stairs just to sit next to him. To me, that is not... It's more like that was I mean, I don't believe her that he drug her by the hair, but if he did want her to sit next to him, that was a sweet thing. And I believe that he probably did want her to sit next to him. Because, you know, he was always loving with her in everything that I saw. And then the last thing about, I had to explain to George about how if he were to destroy my car, I couldn't take my son to school. Well, she hadn't even seen her son in a week before she killed her boyfriend, so I don't want to hear it. Well, actually, I do want to hear it, so continue, please.
officer meetings, where I would be forced to sit for hours in the parking lot waiting for him. For causing me so much trauma and pain, mentally, physically, emotionally, I had to be hospitalized more than once. For destroying my reputation and integrity, for my M for murderer scarlet letter, not letting me feel safe to live, talk to other people.
Okay, it sounds to me like she's blaming George for her murdering him and getting a scarlet letter M because she murdered him. I just can't believe she would say something like that. That's horrible. Okay, let's rewind that. I also missed the part about how she had to sit in the parking lot at George's batterers intervention classes for hours.
Me to make sure I was alive and in one piece, for threatening to burn down our townhome and set my car on fire because I got a job, for holding me hostage on weekends my son was supposed to come over by keeping my keys around his neck, my phone in his crotch, and a butcher knife stuck in the middle of the table as a warning not to ask anything or try to leave, for stabbing me in the leg and not letting me call 911 for an ambulance or seek help, where I nearly bled to death until I concocted a lie to save him from being arrested, for destroying my phone with a hammer because my son called, for me experiencing ever being arrested and after today, prison, for beating me almost blind, crushing my occipital lobe, for having me experience what it means to see stars like in the cartoons, where a character has a tall lump on their head. I had that too, and many times. For dragging me downstairs by my hair in the middle of the night just to sit next to him. For taking my car driving drunk with my debit card to buy more alcohol while I slept, even after I kindly explained the importance of my car to take my son to school foremost, me to work, and he to his batterers intervention classes and probation officer meetings, where I would be forced to sit for hours in the parking lot waiting for him. For causing me so much trauma and pain, mentally, physically, emotionally, I had to be hospitalized more than once. For destroying my reputation and integrity, for my M for murderer scarlet letter, not letting me feel safe to live, talk to other people, spend time with my son, have a job, friendships, simply go to the bathroom with the door closed, or go to sleep soundly or comfortably. I forgive George for lying, for him trying in so many ways, so many times, to end me with his terrifying love. I also forgive the Torres family, his mother and father foremost, also his 2 ex-wives and daughters, all for knowing who George was, capable of, and has done in the past, his history of violence and where he learned it, then to keep turning a blind eye when I would ask for help. All of his siblings, including Pharrell Torres, who is now on his way to prison for stabbing the mother of their baby in the side of her head. For everyone who knew what George was doing to me, sometimes how and when, but allowed and enabled.
Show your daughter how much you love her with this beautiful gift. It says,
I forgive them for caring too late. I hope they all ask themselves while quiet and comfortable in bed at night the uneasy question, what could I have done to stop this from happening to both of them? And after all the times Sarah tried to, by asking for help from all of us and so many times. Another great contributor of my gold is social media, with its greed, insensitivity, deception, obvious exploitation, and advantageous gain from my criminal case as a whole, and for sentencing me by anticipation as a result of ignorance and hate, conjured and fabricated by the organized crime that is social media, which condemned me in the court of global public opinion since the beginning. My family law case is the new prey waiting to be picked apart and...
Okay, what she said about social media, I think she's talking about us, the true crime world, and I will gladly accept whatever criticism that she has. And if we made her look terrible to the world, she deserved it because she is a terrible person. So I'm glad to hear her say that about us. Thank you, Sarah. Let's rewind.
Emotionally, I had to be hospitalized more than once. For destroying my reputation and integrity, for my M for murderer scarlet letter, not letting me feel safe to live, talk to other people, spend time with my son, have a job, friendships, simply go to the bathroom with the door closed, or go to sleep soundly or comfortably. I forgive George for lying, for him trying in so many ways, so many times, to end me with his terrifying love. I also forgive the Torres family, his mother and father foremost, also his 2 ex-wives and daughters, all for knowing who George was, capable of, and has done in the past, his history of violence and where he learned it, then to keep turning a blind eye when I would ask for help. All of his siblings, including Pharrell Torres, who is now on his way to prison for stabbing the mother of their baby in the side of her head, For everyone who knew what George was doing to me, sometimes how and when, but allowed and enabled. I forgive them for caring too late. I hope they all ask themselves while quiet and comfortable in bed at night the uneasy question, what could I have done to stop this from happening to both of them? And after all the times Sarah tried to, by asking for help from all of us and so many times. Another great contributor of my gold is social media, with its greed, insensitivity, deception, obvious exploitation, and advantageous gain from my criminal case as a whole, and for sentencing me by anticipation as a result of ignorance and hate, conjured and fabricated by the organized crime that is social media, which condemned me in the court of global public opinion since the beginning. My family law case is the new prey waiting to be picked apart and pillaged from me being made infamous by social media in my criminal case. It simply seems I cannot forgive and be forgiven and move forward.
Nope.
Social media has made me a pariah. It has caused great oppression and undeniable disadvantages, especially by broadcasting and manipulating my cases online. In my criminal case, as a result, my opportunities to be given a fair, proper, and uninfluenced, successful conclusion was heavily depleted and poisoned. I forgive them. Also, all of the media tycoons for not having a life of their own, trying so desperately to make themselves seem so right by making me appear so wrong. Forgiveness for prejudgment, ridiculous theatrics, lies, making and taking blood money from my and others' misfortunes, accidents, and catastrophes. It's all over their hands and their keyboards. And even...
This is really crazy. She's saying, oh, I forgive all these people for all the terrible things that they've done to me. They made me look bad for what I did to my boyfriend. Does any of these descriptions that she's saying sound like she's forgiven anyone for anything? It sounds like she's got a list of grudges that she's announcing. She doesn't sound forgiving at all. Not that we want her forgiveness, because we don't.
After all that's been said and done, theorized, hypothesized, scrutinized, and blasphemed in my case, still no one knows me. In the end, I forgive myself for not choosing my life sooner, for not being more brave, vigilant, bolder, and outspoken, stronger, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, for being hopeless, desperate, simple-minded, weak, and inexperienced. I forgive myself for not realizing I was enduring a life of domestic violence and that the vicious cycle of never ends. I had nothing to compare to. I've never been hit by a man ever before in my life. I was raised hitting a woman was wrong and should never happen. No excuse.
Okay, I want to add to that. And Sarah should have added to that too. It is wrong to hit a woman, but it's also wrong to hit a man or a human. And probably not very good to hit animals either. So why is she singling herself out as the chosen one who should never be hit? You shouldn't hit anyone. That should go without saying.
Forgive myself for not escaping permanently, for not fighting back sooner to save myself, my son, my dogs, home and car. Having 20/20 hindsight, thinking of everything I could have done differently or better to avoid the outcome. I think about this every day since. Also, of all the good days we had together, for him at least, while I was constantly in hyperdrive, high alert, and paranoid, making sure I did everything right all the time. If not, the great possibility I would be ended as George threatened me with so many times before. I forgive myself for falling in love with a monster, and no matter how grotesque he may become, I still loved him, hoped, and forgave. I tried breaking the spell so he wouldn't be a monster anymore.
Sarah, you are the monster.
I saw who he was inside. George made me then, now, and always love him for all of his cracks also. We made each other our own brilliant pieces of art from the cracks and repairs. Unfortunately, not all cracks can be. In all of my forgiveness, George is my greatest lesson and will forever be a part of me. I think of him every day and still speak to him when alone on the rec yard. I ask his forgiveness and that he looks for me at the gates of heaven so I can tell him how sorry I am, endlessly, and that I never stopped loving him. In all of it and still. When I first came to jail, I put my mat under my bed and cried all day and all night for months, only falling asleep from being so exhausted with grief. I wrote him letters. I wrote his family and his daughters, apologizing for asking for their forgiveness. But due to fear that my life or sons would be jeopardized, I did not send. I am sorry. I cannot begin to fathom any of their grief and sadness. Please forgive me. Almost everything reminds me of him, seeing my stab wound especially every day especially. It truly reminds me that all I really did live through. George haunts me. He is everywhere. I believe because I do still love him, think of him, and miss his laugh the most. In my heart, I know he is with me and understands that this tragedy was not intentional. I hope everyone can, his family foremost. I didn't mean for this to happen. Please wholeheartedly know that, and always, I would never. Forgive me, George. Forgive me, Torres family. Forgive me, Judge Cranick. To the entire planet, please forgive me. I graciously and
To me, that is not asking for forgiveness. That's not begging for forgiveness. It's more like demanding forgiveness. Forgive me, Torres family. Forgive me, Judge. Forgive me, everyone. No, that's not a request. It's not asking. The answer is no, even if you would have asked. No.
ask for consideration for forgiveness to be extended instead of judgment, for reconciliation and restoration for all of us to move forward. My apology is profuse and ceaseless. Allow me please to brush off the muck, wipe the blood off of my face, and fix the cuts in my skin. I ask for understanding in what really happened and for how long, for second chances, repentance and redemption, to advocate for all domestic violence survivors, to help them overcome, heal, and still hope, always, to make their voices heard, to confidently walk with all of their scars on the outside and the inside, to help them not ever become a casualty of domestic violence as so many others, to stop the abuse and maltreatment before it's too late. There is always hope, and you can survive. In my soft-spoken conclusion, I ask this: would I be the darling mother, celebrated woman of the year, if it were I who died? How many daughters, mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, nieces, and friends have been because they did? I am a survivor. Learn to do.
The answer to that, would she be the darling mother and all that stuff if she had survived? Or if she had been the one that died? That was their question. The answer is no. You would not have been the darling person. You would have been the abuser. Because there was so much evidence on your phone, at least, that showed you being the abuser of George. So no, you would not have been a darling person. He would have been the, battered spouse who had to protect himself. That's what you would have been, the batterer. And that's what you are.
Seek justice, rebuke oppressors, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Isaiah 1:17, all-encompassing, protect the abused.
Ms. Boone, is that the end of your written statement?
Yes.
Now, gathering your thoughts, did you want to make an oral statement?
I do.
All right, would you do that now?
Yes, please. My statement, my verbal statement, is primarily to the Torres family, to the judge, to his daughters.
What about his son?
I know you all know who I really am, and that I did care for George, and that I do still love George. I know you know that we had very many good days, and I take offense to the statement of being said that this is just for a moment. Right now with me here in the courtroom in front of you all, this is just for a moment. But the moments before that, in order for me to be here, is endless. It's everlasting. The scars that I have on the inside My outside scars have healed, except for my stab wound. But this has changed me as a person to see things differently and to understand things differently and to not be weak and just try to protect yourself and forever, regardless of the time that I may receive from today, I forever will have this experience. I forever will have George Torres with me in my heart, in my mind, my body, and my soul. As he and I used to say that we were one soul split into two bodies. This is not just for a moment. It may be for everyone in this courtroom, but when I leave, this is forever. When you all leave, that this is forever. This is forever for everyone here and those who it matters to most. I am one of those who will experience this forever. I'm sorry. Words do not define my shame, and I don't know what else it is that I can say and convey to the Torres family how this happened. The ifs and whys and how really don't matter. It happened, and I'm sorry. Words cannot describe. And I hope that everyone can forgive me, the Torres family most of all, and his daughters, because I know what he meant to them. And I don't think that anybody ever understood what he meant to me and I to him. And I ask for forgiveness.
Ms. Boone, I have just one or two questions, if you don't mind. And you can speak on it if you want or not. But this is a unique case, and one of the reasons it's so unique is that you were in jail for 4.5 years prior to your trial. And I understand that when you were brought up as a child, that you did have some spirituality in your family. Some church, some religion.
Always.
But I understand that you got away from that. Did you have a chance during the 4.5 years to look back at your spirituality?
Absolutely. You know, everyone's supposed that this is one of the worst experiences of my life, and it's actually been one of my greatest. If I were not beaten to death, I was going to work myself to death on the outside, and I never had time to get back into my Bible and to pray and to be with the Lord. And I, being here incarcerated, have had time, of course, to get closer to God, to reacquaint myself to him and realize what it's all about. This is all temporary. And when I say temporary, I don't mean by being set free in jail or from prison or wherever else. It means being set free and temporary, meaning that you work for something higher. You work for God, that you strive for your crown to be placed upon your head by Jesus Christ by being said, "You have done well, my good and faithful servant." I've always tried to be a good and faithful servant. I was just a servant as opposed to doing all that I can when my family were alive and I was going through everything up to this point. I've become so much more closer to the Lord, and it's made me such a better person, and I hope that I am an example going forward of the Lord's light and can draw many people to me because of it.
Thank you.
Any follow-up, State?
No, I assumed that was the final word.
Thank you. She returned back to counsel's table. Anything else from your side of the ledger, Mr. Owens?
No more witnesses, Judge, just arguments.
Okay. Anything else in rebuttal, or just proceed?
Okay, now I'm going to try to fast forward to the sentence from the judge.
any loved one you see in a situation like that is going to run and let them out. So my thought was, obviously, they were both drinking. But what has he done to her? And I think it's telling about what she'd endured. So it's not a clear-cut case, Judge. It's not black and white. There is some gray. And it's up to you to decide what's appropriate based on the court's, based on the jury's decision. But I would ask you to temper whatever justice.
An attorney, one will be provided to you. I'm going to have the courtroom deputy provide you the paperwork. Because you've
Prior to this trial. Thank you.
Thank you. Any rebuttal by the state?
No.
Okay. The court has had the opportunity to review the evidence and testimony that was presented at trial. The victim impact statements presented here today, the statements of character witnesses, both orally and in writing, Dr. Harper's report and testimony, the defendant's testimony, pre-sentencing investigation, the arguments of the state and the arguments of the defense. Court pronounces sentence as follows. Ms. Boone, court sentences you to life in the Department of Corrections with credit time served that Madam Clerk will provide to you momentarily. There are also court costs and costs of prosecution, which Madam Clerk will give you the totals of momentarily. Due to the court levying a life sentence, the court is inclined to liquidate those to a civil judgment unless I hear opposition from the state.
No opposition, Your Honor.
All right. Madam Clerk, if you could please give us the credit time served and the court costs, please.
4 years, 9 months, and 8 days, and the court costs are $418, a state prosecution fee of $100, a dirt fee of $50, and a PD. Oh, excuse me, you're not screwdriver.
I'm right.
So the total would come up to $680.
All right, ma'am, the court costs and costs of prosecution are $618. Those will be liquidated to a civil judgment. You will be given credit time served of 4 years, 9 months, and 8 days. You will have 30 days from today to appeal the judgment and sentence in writing. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided to you. I'm going to have the courtroom deputy provide you the paperwork. Because you've been incarcerated for the last 58 some odd months, the court is going to declare that you are indigent in this matter. I cannot appoint the public defender to represent you as they are conflicted out. Similarly, I cannot appoint the regional conflict counsel to represent you for the same reasons. The clerk will appoint an attorney from the conflict wheel who specializes in appellate litigation. And again, you'll have 30 days from today to appeal that judgment and sentence in writing. Do you have any questions for me? You will now be remanded into the custody of the Orange County Jail to transfer you to the Department of Corrections, and I wish you the best of luck. State, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, anything further? No, sir. All right. Thank you all very much.
Okay, well, we finally have justice for George Torres, and I'm really happy for his family. It's my understanding that in the state of Florida, when you're sentenced to life, there is no possibility of parole. If I'm wrong about that, please leave it in the comments and let me know. But I was kind of waiting to hear that, but I was reading a lot of people saying that that's the state of Florida, that they don't give parole on life sentences. And if you want to see this video without my commentary, I will put a link to the original video in the comment section, and I'll pin it at the very top. So that's the end of Sarah Boone and her, well, not the end of her, but it's the end of her first court case. I expect her to appeal, but I'm happy. I'm happy with the sentence and the verdict and everything. What did y'all think about it? That's the end.